Hi guys, what's up? My name is David and welcome back to my channel. So in a few days I will be starting my third year of my bachelor's degree in Scandinavian studies, and based on my experience with my studies to date, plus all kinds of other stuff that I have done, I would like to talk about a topic that is very close to my heart, which is bridging the gap between academia and popular culture slash generally available knowledge. So, if you've been watching my channel for a while, you'll know that I have tried to communicate stuff that I know either from university or just from reading up academic stuff in general to make it more accessible to people who might not have the need or ability to look for academic papers or books or go to university, stuff like that. And I went to a series of lectures that was organized at the festival in Norway that I've been to called Midgardsblot, and there were researchers from different areas of Viking Age related studies who were saying that better communication of what exactly is being done in this research area is needed. But what I heard as a young person, bear in mind, I am 19 years old, is that they don't know how to communicate the research to a wider audience. And well, I am not necessarily saying that age has something to do with it. I do feel like younger people nowadays are more well versed in how media works and how communication through multimedia works. And I would not say that I am like an expert on it because I only have this small channel. But I do think that more communication and communication skills are needed in areas of research, specifically in humanities, because sometimes it feels like people just have no idea what we're doing exactly. Because when you hear the word research, you generally think about, I don't know, a person in a lab coat testing things in a petri dish and coming up with very specific findings of what they have done and why that was relevant and necessary to know. But there's so much more to research than just that, and the humanities sector is actually pretty relevant to the present and future of humankind. But because not enough is being communicated in a clear and accessible way, people are starting to think that humanity related degrees and research are not relevant to society whatsoever, which is absolutely not true. And as someone who studies Scandinavian studies and is planning to do a master's degree in Viking and medieval Norse studies, I do know that what I am doing with my life might not be as directly useful and relevant to society than some other degree, but that shouldn't mean that what I and other people in this area of research are doing is completely irrelevant. And I personally do think that researching a specific area or a specific time period or a specific phenomenon can also bring more understanding to wider concepts. For example, when we take the Viking Age, it might seem like a very small period in the history of Western and Northern Europe, but when you look at the amount of trading contacts within that time period with other areas of the world, like the Roman and Byzantine Empire, and later when you look at the way in which the Viking Age is being used and was being used by, for example, German and Scandinavian nationalists in the 19th and 20th century, and how it is still used in present day by modern Norse pagans or by tourism companies to get people to go to Viking related places, it is still very relevant. And the better it is communicated, the more knowledgeable people will be able to become. Because I do think there is a want from researchers to communicate things as accurately as possible to the broad public. But the thing with the broad public is that not everyone really cares about 100% historical accuracy. It's more about sensationalism, it's more about the very special things and not just in general what is being done. Like, people are interested when a new discovery is done because it changes the way that history had been perceived unto this point. They don't really care if something went exactly according to plan and according to the way that things always go. But I think it's also because it's just not communicated clearly enough what is happening. There is such a big gap between what is being done and what is being communicated. And also because the researchers themselves are not always the ones that actually communicate their research to a broader audience. So it has to go through, for example, journalists who write about it, but then the journalists not always have the right academic knowledge, so they just write what they think they understand about the topic, which is not necessarily bad because they form the words of the academics into something that will be more understandable to a wider public. But again, then a lot of meaning goes away. But then I also know that there are a lot of researchers who are not able to write in a different tone than the one they would in an academic paper, which is also fine because I personally would love to read very specific academic factual terminology. I like using pretentious vocabulary, so to say. I do like it when people write like that and don't necessarily lower their level because they assume people won't understand. But on the other hand, some people won't understand if you use those words, so you have to find some kind of balance between saying what you would normally say and saying something in a way that will make it more understandable for some people. Because the whole thing about the gap between academia and popular culture is this inherent idea that academia and scholarship is somehow higher and better than the average person, and that the level needs to be brought down in order for people to understand these crazy abstract concepts that are being discussed in academia, which is not necessarily always true. I do think there are some academics who think they are way better than everyone else when in reality they are not. And being an academic is not necessarily your whole personality, or at least it shouldn't be, I believe. But for this gap to be bridged, if we want it to be bridged, there needs to be cooperation between people from the scholarly world and people outside of the scholarly world, and also just interdisciplinary cooperation from people from different areas of the scholarly world. Another thing is that the right information should be more easily accessible than it is right now, in my opinion. Like, I have made some videos about symbols that are called Viking on the internet, but they're actually not Viking at all, or Facebook groups that are spreading misinformation about the Viking Age, which then becomes very easily accessible and becomes the dominant discourse because most people have access to that type of information than actual books or papers which are generally behind a paywall. So something needs to be done in order to make the factually correct, or at least less incorrect, information more accessible than it is right now. And I know that it's difficult because governments do not care that much about humanities and funding. So in order for these people who are working in humanities to get some sort of money, they need to put their stuff behind the paywall. But generally on things like academia.edu, most of the money doesn't even go to the researchers themselves. So at this point, why bother? I personally am planning to continue working in academia. Like, I am just finishing my bachelor's degree, and then I want to do my master's degree, and then probably get a PhD. And I would love for my research to be available to people who would like to read it. And I know that I am in a very niche area of interest, and people will probably not be that interested in reading my stuff. I mean, I can see that with my channel already. It's not like attracting millions of people, but that is not my intention with what I'm doing. I would rather have a handful of people who are genuinely interested in what I have to say than thousands of people who just like stuff, you know? But yeah, this whole bridging the gap thing is something that I think about a lot, and I actually started a minor program, which is like an extra program next to your bachelor's program, which is called Public Presentation of the Past, and it's exactly about this stuff. So I am hoping to get even more insight into how I can better communicate my academic knowledge in a way that is not looking down on people who might not have this knowledge, and also in a way that makes the right information more accessible than the wrong information. And it's something that I really want to do, not for myself, but actually for literally everyone else. I just I do not like misinformation, and I do not like how easily accessible this misinformation is. But with today's rapidly growing social media, where fact checking is not really that much of a thing. I mean, I personally don't use X or Twitter, but I've heard that they have this like reader's notes, which is comes close to something being peer reviewed, but still, it is so easy to just say something that is wildly incorrect, and we need to be aware of it. Everyone that uses the internet just has to be aware that not everything you read is correct, and you should feel free to check information that you think might not be correct, and do not take everything for granted. But on the other way, that also takes a lot of time and effort, which not everyone has. So it would just be better if there was less misinformation on the internet. But yeah, unfortunately, I personally cannot fix that. The only thing I can do is ask people to be aware of it, I guess, and be aware of it myself. If I ever notice that I have ever said something that is not correct, I will better myself. I will point it out. And if you have ever heard me say something that you disagree with, then you are more than welcome to tell me in a civilized way. So yeah, my main point is just that there is a gap to be bridged between academia and popular culture, and efforts have to come from both sides in order to make this a smaller gap. And I know that there is a lot of people in academia who do not want to bridge this gap because they still believe that they are morally and mentally superior than everyone else, but I do not think they are, and I do not think that I am. So I do think this gap should be bridged, and people should have better access to the right knowledge. So yeah, thank you for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're curious to know about my studies in general, feel free to watch other videos that I have made. If there's something specific that you would like to hear from me, I am always open to suggestions, and yeah, I will see you next week. Bye bye.